Whispers of scandal and rumor echoed beneath the chandeliers, but little did anyone suspect that Isabella, quiet, refined, and utterly humiliated, still had one devastating card to play. Isabella Harrington, née Moretti, was born into a humble Italian family that prided itself on authenticity, warmth, and loyalty. She had grown up surrounded by the comforting aroma of fresh pasta sauce, the echo of laughter in cramped kitchens, and the gentle hum of the Tuscan countryside. When she was just 15, her parents immigrated to America, settling in New York, hopeful for a better future and more possibilities for their only daughter. Over time, Isabella adapted to the American way of life, embracing its fast pace while retaining the grace and unassuming charm of her heritage. Jonathan Harrington, by contrast, was a product of wealth, privilege, and relentless ambition. His father, Charles Harrington, had made a small fortune in real estate before Jonathan was born. Growing up in Manhattan's Upper East Side, Jonathan enjoyed every advantage life could offer: private tutors, expensive vacations, and a network of equally privileged friends. Yet, he was never content to rest on the laurels of his father's success. He wanted to carve his own path and outdo his father's legacy. His obsession with wealth and power made him relentless and, eventually, enormously successful. Their paths crossed in a most unexpected way at a non-profit gala in Brooklyn. Isabella, then 24, was volunteering as a translator for Italian artisans who had come to exhibit their craftsmanship. Jonathan, the freshly minted CEO of a tech solutions startup, had been dragged there by a colleague. The moment he saw Isabella moving with natural grace among the guests, exchanging pleasantries, her raven black hair swept into a loose bun, he was drawn to her. She was the most genuine person in that entire room, brimming with posturing socialites. The two fell in love swiftly. For Isabella, Jonathan's drive was awe-inspiring. He seemed so certain of his path. For Jonathan, Isabella offered something he never realized he needed: the comfort of unconditional love, untarnished by greed or ambition. Within a year, they were married. The wedding was a modest yet elegant affair, reflecting Isabella's preference for simplicity. Jonathan's father tried to intervene, wanting a grand extravaganza befitting the Harrington name. But Isabella, always sweet and persuasive, convinced him that genuine happiness lay in close-knit celebration. In the early years, their marriage was a vision of harmony. Jonathan's company soared, garnering major clients and forming alliances with powerful names in finance and industry. He even had a meeting once with the legendary Warren Buffett in Omaha, which he boasted about endlessly. Meanwhile, Isabella excelled at maintaining a warm and welcoming home, hosting intimate dinner parties for Jonathan's associates and traveling with him when his schedule permitted. Their synergy was enviable. She brought the heart, he brought the ambition. Whenever Jonathan launched into overdrive, working day and night, obsessed with new contracts, Isabella was his solace. She would stroke his hair at night, reminding him to sleep, to eat, to remember that life was more than numbers on a screen. He'd call her his anchor, and the sincerity in his voice illuminated the depth of his gratitude. Watching him fall asleep with the faint lines of worry etched on his brow, she often wondered if her love alone was enough to temper his ceaseless hunger for success. The pressures of corporate life grew. Jonathan was riding the wave of success, but also navigating a sea of sharks. Competitors emerged, each determined to take a bite out of Harrington Tech Solutions. As the stakes rose, so did Jonathan's ego. He started to see the world in terms of winners and losers, with no middle ground. While Isabella admired his drive, she slowly sensed a fraying at the edges of his humanity. When Jonathan was in his mid-30s, he caught the attention of influential venture capitalists who were enamored with his charming presence and track record. They infused his company with capital, fueling expansions into new territories: Silicon Valley, London, and Hong Kong. The brand Harrington Tech became synonymous with innovation. But as his empire expanded, Jonathan became less of the humble man Isabella had fallen in love with. Surrounded by yes men, flattery, and fame, he lost some of the grounding she'd provided. The late nights at the office turned into networking soirees, questionable dinners, and eventually a gateway to infidelity. Isabella noticed the change in his demeanor first, the dismissive tone, the restlessness at home. She never confronted him directly, always hoping it was just stress. It was around this time that Clarissa Montague stepped into their lives. She was introduced as the daughter of Lawrence Montague, one of Jonathan's early angel investors. Clarissa was beautiful, confident, and understood power plays like a second language. With an Ivy League education in business and a flair for seduction, she was used to getting her way. She sidled into Jonathan's professional world on the pretext of forging partnerships and quickly found her way into his personal life. Isabella suspected something was wrong. She would hear hushed phone calls, see text messages appear on Jonathan's phone at odd hours. His cold excuses, just business, Bella, or I'm too exhausted to talk, became more frequent. Still, Isabella tried to repair the unraveling tapestry of their marriage. She reminded herself of her vow to stand by him in sickness and in health, in good times and bad. She assured herself that, perhaps, once the next deal was sealed, Jonathan would find his way back to her. Eventually, she learned she was pregnant. Overjoyed, she believed this might be the miracle that would help them reconnect. She presented him with the news over a candlelit dinner. Instead of the unbridled excitement she expected, he offered a lukewarm response and promptly resumed checking stock updates on his phone. It stung, but she kept her tears at bay. The baby, she told herself, would become a reason for them to rediscover love. She could never have imagined that her pregnancy would set off the chain of events that culminated in the scandalous public betrayal, a betrayal that would rock New York's social circles and leave reporters drooling for a headline. Nor did she anticipate that in the face of heartbreak, she would uncover a strength and a hidden ace up her sleeve, capable of toppling even the mightiest empire. Isabella's pregnancy initially brought a fleeting sense of hope into the Harrington household. For a moment, Jonathan seemed slightly more attentive. He'd place his hand on Isabella's belly, curiosity mingling with uncertainty in his eyes. When she suffered morning sickness, he'd bring her toast and ginger tea, checking in on her before rushing to the office. Yet the tension between them lingered. Clarissa's presence weighed on their marriage like an invisible anchor, dragging them deeper into troubled waters. The changing dynamic didn't go unnoticed by Isabella's close friend, Lydia Santos. A free-spirited journalist with a knack for sniffing out secrets, Lydia had watched Jonathan's transformation with increasing alarm. She advised Isabella to be cautious, to protect her heart and finances. But Isabella, ever trusting, felt torn between the warnings of her friend and her loyalty to her husband. She confided in Lydia about the text messages, the sudden calls at midnight, the cryptic nights out. Lydia insisted, "He's hiding something, Bella. You have to investigate." Isabella hesitated. She feared what she might find. She dreaded the shame of a broken marriage. Above all, she worried about her unborn child growing up without a father's unwavering affection. A few weeks later, an industry conference took Jonathan to London. Clarissa, conveniently, had a meeting scheduled in the same city. Isabella tried to ignore the coincidence, but the day after Jonathan left, an article surfaced in a tabloid complete with blurred photos suggesting the two had been seen dining intimately at a luxury restaurant in Mayfair. Though the publication never named them outright, calling them mystery power players, Isabella recognized Clarissa's distinctive blonde waves and Jonathan's tall, confident silhouette. When Isabella confronted Jonathan upon his return, he brushed off the accusations, claiming the tabloids fabricated stories. "You know how these outlets operate, Bella. Anything for a sensational headline." He even had the gall to appear offended that she'd question him. Tired, pregnant, and emotionally taxed, Isabella accepted his explanation, if only to preserve her sanity. But the illusions shattered entirely when Isabella discovered a receipt for a diamond necklace from a high-end jeweler in London. It was not in her name. She found it tucked into one of Jonathan's suit pockets while sorting laundry. That night, lying awake in bed, she replayed every instance where he had slighted her, every time he had spoken about Clarissa with too much enthusiasm, every whispered phone conversation that ended abruptly when she walked into the room. There was no more room for doubt. Jonathan was having an affair. She wasn't the only one who discovered the truth. The rumor mill was abuzz in New York. A high-profile philanthropist, Thalia Kensington, hosted a charity brunch where Clarissa appeared on Jonathan's arm, though Isabella was conspicuously absent. Whispers raced through the crowd about the pregnant Mistress Harrington, overshadowed by this stunning, brazen other woman. It was a level of disrespect that made even seasoned socialites cringe. Upon hearing the gossip, Lydia confronted Jonathan privately, threatening to run a scathing expose if he continued to humiliate Isabella. Jonathan, indifferent to her threats, simply responded, "Print what you want. No one will believe you without proof." Then he added with a chilling finality, "And if you do, you'll regret it." The casual menace in his voice made Lydia's blood run cold. She realized Jonathan was no longer the kind-hearted man Isabella had married. He had become ruthless. One afternoon, Isabella received a phone call from an unknown number. On the other end, Clarissa Montague's silky voice purred, "Hello, Bella. I thought you deserved to know Jonathan and I are in love. He's going to leave you soon. Prepare yourself." Isabella's hands shook and bile rose in her throat. She wanted to slam the phone down, but Clarissa's arrogant tone kept her listening. "It's not personal," Clarissa said in a voice dripping with faux sympathy. "You just no longer fit into his life. Once the baby is born, we'll figure out child support and all that. But let's be honest, you've become an obstacle to his ambition." Rage erupted inside Isabella. She realized Clarissa was intentionally calling to rattle her. That night, she demanded Jonathan come home early. When he arrived, she confronted him again with tears in her eyes. "She called me. She told me everything. Why, Jonathan? Why are you doing this to me, doing this to us?" For the first time, she saw a crack in his composure. He lowered his head, fiddling with his cuffs as he replied in a cool yet uncertain tone, "Bella, we've grown apart. You wouldn't understand my world now. Clarissa does. She's aligned with my goals." She pressed her trembling hands against her stomach, hardly believing the words coming from the man she had once thought of as her soulmate. "We made a vow," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. He avoided her gaze, then mumbled, "I'm sorry," before leaving the room. The apology was empty, mechanical. It only confirmed how far gone he was. For a moment, Isabella felt her entire life collapsing. But then, an unexpected swell of resolve coursed through her. She was not the naive child who had come to America with nothing. She had become a Harrington, and with that name came resources and secrets. If Jonathan was discarding her so callously, she needed to protect herself, and she needed to protect her unborn child. Quietly, she reached out to her family lawyer, Antonio Rossi, a long-standing friend of her father's. She explained the situation, and he listened empathetically. "We'll find a way," he promised. "Jonathan may be powerful, but he's not invincible." The next day, Isabella rifled through the mansion's study, searching for documents, anything that might reveal just how deeply Jonathan was entangled with Clarissa and how she might safeguard her own future. She had no idea that an even more treacherous betrayal was on the horizon, one that would take place in front of the world's cameras, making her heartbreak a public spectacle. Nor did she realize that beneath her quiet composure lay an unbreakable strength that would turn the tables in a way no one saw coming. The news broke on a Sunday morning. Jonathan Harrington, accompanied by Clarissa Montague, held a press conference outside Harrington Tech's newly opened headquarters. A throng of reporters and photographers jostled for space, surprised to see Jonathan addressing the media on a weekend without prior notice. Standing in front of the sleek, glass building, Jonathan looked composed, albeit tense. Clarissa stood next to him in a chic designer dress, her manicured hand resting possessively on his arm. Microphones were thrust forward as reporters demanded to know the reason for this sudden announcement. Jonathan cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming," he began, ignoring the shocked gasps when Clarissa angled her body closer to him. "I want to set the record straight. There have been rumors circulating about my personal life. Rumors about my marriage and my relationship with Miss Montague." He paused, his gaze drifting across the crowd. "Isabella and I are," he closed his eyes briefly, as though summoning courage. "We are parting ways. Our values and goals have diverged." Clarissa took this as her cue. "Jonathan and I share a vision," she declared softly, yet audibly enough for the microphones to catch. "We intend to work together to expand the Harrington brand globally, leveraging the Montague family's international connections." Isabella watched the live broadcast from home, frozen in horror. She was 7 months pregnant, alone in the vast living room. She had no idea that Jonathan planned to stage such a spectacle. Her cheeks burned as she listened to him speak of her as if she were merely a past business partner who no longer aligned with his goals. The cameras zoomed in on Clarissa's triumphant smile. A reporter shouted, "But what about your wife, Mr. Harrington? She's expecting your child." Another voice followed. "Does this mean you and Miss Montague are officially together? Are you planning to marry her?" Jonathan exchanged a knowing glance with Clarissa before replying, "Isabella will always be respected. I will ensure that she and our child are cared for financially. However, I must move forward, both personally and professionally." The callous finality of his statement sent ripples of shock through the crowd. The moment became even more appalling when Clarissa, brazenly stepping forward, slipped her arm around Jonathan's waist. Their message was clear. Isabella was out, Clarissa was in. Pandemonium erupted among the reporters. Their flashes lit up Jonathan's stoic face, while Clarissa smiled faintly, enjoying the scandalous attention. The press conference ended abruptly, with security ushering Jonathan and Clarissa inside the headquarters. Instantly, social media exploded with hashtags about #Harrington scandal, #wife replaced, and #Mistress unveiled. By evening, every major news outlet had a segment on the Harrington drama. Isabella sank onto the couch, her hands quivering over her swollen belly. Despite the heartbreak that threatened to crush her, a sudden wave of maternal protectiveness surged within. She pressed her palms around her abdomen, feeling the faint flutter of her baby's movements. She realized, in that moment, that she needed a plan. There was no time to be the hapless victim in Jonathan and Clarissa's storyline. Summoning her courage, she called Lydia. Her friend, outraged by the brazen public betrayal, arrived within the hour. "That snake," Lydia spat, pacing around the living room. "He made you look like baggage, Bella. What are you going to do?" Isabella swallowed the lump in her throat. "I need to protect my child's future," she said firmly. "I have to secure legal help, make sure my baby and I won't be cast aside once Jonathan fully embraces Clarissa." Her voice trembled, but her determination was unwavering. Lydia nodded. "Call Antonio Rossi. You also need to start gathering everything you can, financial records, correspondence, anything that proves Jonathan's wrongdoing. We can turn the tide in your favor." That same night, Isabella emailed Antonio. A swift reply came back, "We're on it. Remember, as Jonathan's wife, You have rights. He can't just cut you off. Encouraged by this, Isabella spent hours combing through desks, cabinets, even old computer files. She discovered documents that indicated Clarissa's father, Lawrence Montague, had orchestrated a shady deal with Jonathan. It involved offshore accounts, suspicious investments, and a potential conflict of interest within Harrington Tech's board. The more she uncovered, the more she realized that Jonathan's decision to publicly replace her wasn't just about love or lust. It was a calculated move to align with Montague money. The Montagues were rumored to be on the verge of inking a multi-billion-dollar international deal that would catapult Harrington Tech into new markets. Clarissa herself was the golden ticket to this synergy, and Jonathan, in typical fashion, was going after the bigger prize. Isabella felt a pang of heartbreak. Was she so disposable that he would trade their entire history for a financial empire? But heartbreak soon transformed into resolve. She wasn't going to let him bulldoze her life without consequence. She made an appointment with a forensic accountant recommended by Lydia, a bright young woman named Priya Patel, who specialized in uncovering hidden assets. Together, they started mapping out potential avenues to secure Isabella's position. That weekend, Lydia convinced Isabella to attend a charity luncheon at the Metropolitan Museum. "You need to be seen," Lydia insisted. "They threw you under the bus publicly. Now it's time for you to reclaim your narrative." At the event, Isabella's presence sparked a wave of whispers. She wore a demure yet elegant maternity dress, her chin held high despite the swirl of gossip around her. Many guests expressed sympathy, quietly condemning Jonathan's audacity. Others offered discreet greetings, unsure of how to address the elephant in the room, but Isabella maintained her composure, displaying a quiet strength. The media, lurking outside, snapped countless photos of her, alone and pregnant, yet poised. Headlines the next day read, "Mistress Harrington surfaces with dignity." Behind her calm demeanor, Isabella was working tirelessly with Antonio and Priya. She learned that Jonathan's board position could be jeopardized by conflict of interest clauses if the Montagues' deals were found to be unethical. Moreover, she discovered a prenuptial agreement that Jonathan had insisted on before they married had a crucial clause. In the event of adultery proven by evidence, Isabella could leverage a significant claim, even partial ownership of certain assets. Jonathan, in his arrogance, never imagined she'd find the proof. Armed with mounting evidence, Isabella waited for her moment. She refused to confront Jonathan directly, choosing instead to let him believe she was powerless. Meanwhile, Clarissa paraded around town on Jonathan's arm, flaunting designer gowns and diamond jewelry. The tabloids devoured every scandalous detail. Yet, no one suspected that the seemingly timid and abandoned wife was the one orchestrating a carefully planned checkmate. As her 8th month of pregnancy approached, Isabella realized she needed to move swiftly. The birth of her child was imminent, and she wanted to ensure that when her baby arrived, they wouldn't be overshadowed or cast out by Jonathan's ruthless machinations. The days leading up to Isabella's due date were filled with calculated risk. With Lydia's guidance, Isabella leaked subtle rumors to the press, hinting at corporate improprieties within Harrington Tech. She remained anonymous, feeding bits of information through third parties, ensuring no trail led back to her. The media, always hungry for sensational stories, began digging deeper. Before long, financial blogs and even mainstream outlets started questioning the nature of Harrington Tech's expansions and its cozy ties to Montague International. In a separate maneuver, Priya Patel, the forensic accountant, traced a series of illicit transactions linking Montague International to offshore entities. These connections implied tax evasion, money laundering, or at the very least, questionable business ethics. Should the full scope of these revelations come to light, Jonathan and Lawrence Montague could face serious legal repercussions. When Jonathan caught wind of these rumors, he became furious. He suspected a corporate rival was trying to sabotage his imminent partnership with Montague International. Clarissa, equally vexed, demanded immediate damage control. Panicked crisis managers rushed to quell the speculation, issuing official statements that the Harrington-Montague partnership was transparent and fully compliant with international law. Yet, behind the scenes, Jonathan began to lose sleep, snapping at employees and withdrawing into private strategy sessions. Amid this corporate storm, Isabella continued her work quietly. She took solace in the rhythmic beating of her unborn child's heart during her checkups. The child had become her guiding light, a reminder of what she was fighting for. She was determined to bring her baby into a world where they were safe, secure, and not overshadowed by Jonathan's reckless ambitions. One evening, while Isabella was sorting through more documents, she stumbled upon a contract that indicated Clarissa had been hired as a consultant to Harrington Tech with an exorbitant monthly retainer. The arrangement began months before Isabella had even realized there was an affair. This consultancy was an obvious front, channeling funds directly to Clarissa. If proven, it would constitute corporate fraud, as Clarissa was not providing any legitimate service to the company. Isabella couldn't help but wonder about Clarissa's personal motivations. Did she truly love Jonathan, or was she merely seizing an opportunity to amass wealth and power? Perhaps it was both. Regardless, Clarissa's endgame might be marriage to Jonathan, tying herself to the Harrington name, guaranteeing she'd never be short of money or influence. But Isabella had a chance to disrupt that plan and shield her child from the consequences of Jonathan's destructive choices. The tension at Harrington Tech escalated. Employees whispered about an internal audit. HR staff exchanged worried glances whenever Clarissa strolled in wearing expensive heels, addressing the workforce with condescension. Board members started voicing concerns. Is Jonathan's leadership compromised by personal entanglements? Meanwhile, the Montagues, protective of their own reputation, grew uneasy about the swirling rumors of shady deals. They began questioning whether tying themselves too tightly to Jonathan Harrington was wise. Amid these corporate undercurrents, Jonathan and Clarissa maintained a flamboyant public facade. They attended galas together, hand in hand, enjoying front-page coverage in glossy magazines. The headlines, however, were increasingly skeptical: power or passion. The real story behind Harrington's new flame. Clarissa's carefully curated social media posts showed her life of luxury private jets, lavish hotels, exclusive parties. But none of the pictures mentioned Harrington Tech's sudden problems. Isabella's only genuine support during this tumultuous period came from Lydia and her small circle of trusted allies. Even her own parents remained in the dark about the extent of Jonathan's betrayal, as she wanted to spare them the anguish. Every time her mother called from Italy, worried about the pregnancy, Isabella reassured her that things were fine. Eventually, she planned to share everything, but not until her victory was certain. Then, one late afternoon, Isabella received a text from an unknown number. "I have information that will help you. Meet me at the Galleria Cafe at 5 p.m. She hesitated, heart pounding. Who could this be? Could it be a trap orchestrated by Clarissa or Jonathan to discover her plans? Curiosity and desperation for leverage won out. She informed Lydia and insisted on going with a discreet security detail. The cafe, located in a subdued corner of Manhattan, was a far cry from the glitzy spots Jonathan frequented. Clutching her handbag tightly, Isabella sat in a booth near a large painting of a sunlit orchard. Shortly, a man in a dark overcoat approached. He slid into the seat across from her, his face partially obscured by a low baseball cap. "I can't stay long," he said in a gravelly voice, "but you need to know that Montague International has been under investigation by international authorities for years. Alleged bribery, tax evasion, you name it. If Jonathan's partnership with them proceeds, he'll be dragged into a cesspool of legal trouble. There are documents, emails, bank records that prove it." Isabella's eyes widened. "Who are you?" "Someone who hates what they're doing," he answered, slipping a flash drive across the table. "This is everything I have. Use it wisely." Then he stood, heading for the exit without another word. Clutching the flash drive, Isabella felt both exhilaration and fear. This was precisely the kind of smoking gun she needed to bring down the Harrington-Montague alliance, potentially freeing Jonathan and, by extension, her future child from Clarissa's manipulative grasp. But it also meant she was delving into dangerous territory. If Montague International was under investigation, exposing them would bring a fierce backlash from powerful men: Lawrence Montague, his network of politicians, possibly criminals. Did she have the courage to face that? When she showed the drive to Lydia and Priya, they urged caution. "We have to verify the authenticity of these documents. If they're legitimate, you'll have more than enough to force Jonathan's hand," Priya cautioned. Lydia added, "But Montague won't go down without a fight. Be prepared." That night, Isabella paced the hallways of the Harrington mansion, her mind spinning with possibilities. She thought about the unborn baby in her womb, the future waiting for them both. She also thought about Jonathan's public betrayal, the humiliation, and the sorrow he had inflicted upon her. And yet, a small part of her still grieved the loss of the gentleman she once knew, the one who had fallen in love with her at that Brooklyn gala. Where had he gone? In that lonely mansion, with shadows dancing across marble floors, Isabella realized there was no turning back. She would use every ounce of evidence to protect her child and secure her own future. If Jonathan insisted on discarding her for a mistress and forging alliances with criminals, he would have to face the consequences of his actions. She would not remain the meek wife in the background. She would take a rightful place, armed with proof, and avenge the trust she had once freely given. In the days that followed, Isabella carefully orchestrated her next move. She enlisted Antonio Rossi to arrange a private meeting with Jonathan's legal counsel, signaling that she wanted to negotiate a civil, discreet resolution to their marital issues. The request wasn't entirely false. She did want a formal separation and guarantee of child support, but it was also a ploy to gauge Jonathan's next steps. When Jonathan's lawyer, a polished man named Malcolm Wright, showed up at Rossi's office, Isabella and Rossi politely pressed for details about Harrington Tech's finances. "We need clarity," Rossi explained calmly. "We must ensure that Mrs. Harrington's child is adequately provided for, given the father's public statements." Malcolm shifted in his chair, offering carefully curated information. He insisted Harrington Tech was flourishing, that Jonathan intended to be generous with child support, but only if Isabella agreed to sign a strict, non-disclosure agreement about Jonathan's personal and corporate affairs. It was a typical power play gag, her in exchange for financial security. But Isabella refused to commit, stating she'd need more time to review the terms. Leaving the meeting, Isabella felt shaken. Jonathan clearly intended to muzzle her. If she made any public allegations, especially about Montague International, he'd try to discredit her or cut her off financially. But Jonathan hadn't counted on the evidence she had. He believed she was still the docile wife who would cower under legal threats. That assumption would be his downfall. Over the next few weeks, an intricate web of events unfolded. Priya analyzed the flash drive meticulously, confirming the existence of bank transfers, emails, and internal memos implicating Montague International in corruption. Some of these implicated Jonathan's involvement at crucial junctures, though they didn't yet prove direct wrongdoing on his part. However, his willingness to merge with Montague International, despite ongoing investigations, could severely tarnish his reputation and lead to legal scrutiny. With the press already suspicious, it wouldn't take much to fan the flames into a full-blown inferno. Meanwhile, Clarissa continued flaunting her relationship with Jonathan, posting pictures from extravagant trips to exclusive resorts. Harrington Tech executives worried about negative publicity, but Jonathan quelled their concerns with promises of a global expansion once the Montague deal was finalized. It became clear that Jonathan was gambling everything on the Montague alliance. As Isabella entered her final month of pregnancy, her body grew heavy and fatigue set in. Yet, she pressed on, determined to time her revelations for maximum impact. She carefully coordinated with Lydia, who was prepared to break the story of the Montague scandal under the guise of an anonymous insider leak. Isabella also arranged for an emergency board meeting at Harrington Tech, one that she had the right to call, thanks to a little-known provision in their corporate bylaws granting immediate family of the majority shareholder the power to request a meeting in extraordinary circumstances. When news of the emergency board meeting reached Jonathan, he was livid. He confronted Isabella in the foyer of the mansion. It was the first time they'd spoken face-to-face in weeks. She was dressed in a loose, flowing maternity gown, her hair tied back. He looked at her with a mix of anger and bewilderment, as though seeing a stranger. "What are you doing, Bella?" he demanded, his voice echoing off the marble walls. "I agreed to provide for you and the child. There's no need to stir up trouble at the company." Isabella drew in a steadying breath. "I'm not stirring up trouble. I'm ensuring my child's future and the stability of the Harrington name you seem so intent on tarnishing." She tried to keep her voice level, despite the tightness in her chest. His eyes narrowed. "Don't play games with me. You can't possibly understand the complexities of these business deals." A spark of defiance flared in her gaze. "Funny how you assume I'm ignorant just because I haven't been flaunting my skills. You forget I studied economics before we married, and I've learned more from living with you than you realize. I know precisely what's going on with Montague International." Jonathan paled. "You're out of your depth, Bella. Leave this alone. Focus on your pregnancy." The chill in his voice reminded her of the man who had callously replaced her in public. Any nostalgia she might have had for their early years melted away. "I'm focusing on our child, Jonathan," she replied. "That's why I can't let this go." He left, slamming the door behind him. She sank onto the stairs, trembling from the confrontation. As tears threatened to spill, she placed a gentle hand on her belly. "Soon," she whispered to the unborn child, "we'll be free of this nightmare, I promise." Rain pattered against the windows of Harrington Tech's gleaming skyscraper as Isabella stepped into the lobby. She was 8 months pregnant, but her determination overshadowed any discomfort. An emergency board meeting, one she had invoked, was about to take place in the top-floor conference room. Security guards, alerted by a hastily circulated memo, stood watch. Their stern gazes followed as she made her way toward the private elevators. Inside the elevator, her friend Lydia quietly squeezed her hand. "Are you sure you're up for this?" Lydia asked. Isabella inhaled deeply. "I have to be," she replied, "for my baby and for the truth." The boardroom doors were tall and made of frosted glass, revealing only blurred silhouettes inside. Isabella's lawyer, Antonio Rossi, was already waiting in the corridor. His face bore a concerned look, but he greeted her with a reassuring nod. "Let's do this," she said, gently touching her rounded belly. They entered to find Jonathan Harrington at the head of a polished oval table. He wore a sharp suit, though his eyes were ringed with sleeplessness. At his side, Clarissa Montague sat with her arms folded, exuding a tense confidence. Around them, a dozen board members murmured anxiously, shuffling papers and exchanging apprehensive glances. No one quite understood why the seldom-seen Miss S. Harrington had requested this extraordinary gathering. Jonathan tapped his pen on the table. "Isabella," he began, voice taut, "this meeting is highly irregular. Would you explain why we're here?" Isabella glanced at Antonio. He distributed thick folders to each board member. Inside, Antonio said, "You'll find documentation that demands immediate attention." The room fell silent as people flipped through pages of financial data, emails, and meeting transcripts. Isabella had spent weeks compiling these files with the help of a forensic accountant. The documents showed how Montague International, owned by Clarissa's father, had been shifting funds into offshore accounts and paying substantial consultancy fees directly to Clarissa, purportedly via Harrington Tech. One of the board members, a silver-haired woman named Renata Monroe, frowned. "These payments look suspicious," she said. "Consulting fees this high are unusual without itemized deliverables." Isabella nodded. "That's the first red flag. If you keep reading, you'll see more." The next section detailed emails suggesting possible bribery of foreign officials by Montague International. Though it wasn't conclusively tied to Harrington Tech yet, the arrangement Jonathan had been championing aligned them so closely with Montague's operations that any legal fallout would inevitably spill onto Harrington Tech's reputation. Clarissa's cheeks reddened. "I've never seen these emails," she insisted, but her voice trembled. Jonathan, on the other hand, maintained a rigid calm, though a flicker of alarm passed behind his eyes. "Montague International has been under investigation for years," Isabella pressed on. "Jonathan either didn't bother to do the due diligence or chose to ignore what he found. Either way, he risked dragging Harrington Tech into unethical, possibly illegal dealings." A low hum of shock and concern rumbled among the board. Several flipped to the final pages, where a conflict of interest clause from the company's bylaws was highlighted. Isabella had called this meeting under the rarely used provision that allowed an immediate family member of the majority shareholder to request a review if they believed corruption threatened the company's stability. Jonathan stood abruptly, fixing Isabella with a steely gaze. "You're doing this out of spite," he accused. "You want revenge because I left you." She cut him off, her voice surprisingly calm. "You left me publicly, Jonathan. You humiliated me. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I won't let the father of my child destroy the company he built by plunging it into illegal schemes." He opened his mouth to retort, but a board member, a reserved man in his 60s, raised his hand. "Mr. Harrington, these accusations are serious. We've been hearing rumors about Montague International's ethics for months. If this is true, it could devastate our stock prices, not to mention our credibility." Clarissa interjected. "This is a smear campaign. Isabella has no proof these emails are real." Antonio responded, "Everything has been verified by an independent forensic team. Should we need to, we can present it in court." Tension mounted as Isabella pressed a button on the conference room's sleek panel, projecting a series of incriminating messages onto a large screen. One email included a note from Clarissa referencing untraced funds for expediting negotiations in Asia. Another showed Montague International's executives discussing how to keep Harrington Tech's board unaware of certain liabilities. A wave of dismay swept the board members. Voices overlapped in anxious debate, some demanding more details, others insisting on immediate action. Jonathan glared at Isabella. "You're ruining everything we've built," he muttered under his breath. "I'm saving it from you," she replied gently. The baby kicked, as if in agreement. Finally, Henry Blackwood, the board's chairman, stood. His crisp suit and silver hair gave him a commanding presence. "We cannot ignore these documents," he announced. "If Montague International is under investigation, and if these payments to Miss Montague were made without proper oversight, Harrington Tech must suspend any partnership negotiations immediately." Jonathan's jaw tightened. We're on the verge of the biggest global expansion this company has ever seen. If we back out now, we'll lose the Montague funding. Henry held up a hand. Losing that funding is preferable to losing everything to a corruption scandal. Our shareholders will expect us to act responsibly. For the moment, Jonathan, consider the Montague deal frozen. Clarissa let out a frustrated hiss. The board members quietly nodded in agreement with Henry's pronouncement. An even more critical matter loomed: Jonathan's role. Isabella turned to the relevant section of the bylaws. Under this clause, she began, the board has grounds to remove or suspend a CEO if he or she knowingly engages in unethical conduct or jeopardizes the company's integrity. Jonathan looked stunned. You're proposing to remove me? She met his gaze. You forced my hand. A flurry of whispers spread around the table. Finally, Henry spoke again, his tone heavy. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to decide whether to launch a formal investigation into this matter. If so, Jonathan's position as CEO must be suspended during the inquiry. Jonathan's eyes blazed. You can't do this, he warned, his voice quivering with anger. Yet the board members, disturbed by the evidence, found themselves with little choice. One by one, they raised their hands in favor of a temporary removal, culminating in a majority decision. Jonathan stared at them in disbelief, his authority unraveling in a matter of minutes. Security was called to escort Clarissa out when she erupted in protest, shouting that the accusations were fabricated. Her shrill voice echoed in the corridors, fading only as the doors slid shut behind her. Jonathan, though not forcibly removed, stood seething. He seemed unable to meet Isabella's eyes. She felt the baby shift inside her, a tangible reminder of why she'd endured such turmoil. Jonathan finally confronted her, his words low. You'll regret this, Bella. Isabella's expression was resolute, though sadness flickered behind her eyes. I regret that you chose ambition and betrayal over your family. But I won't regret protecting my child and Harrington Tech from corruption. He said nothing else, only turned on his heel and stormed out, leaving the boardroom in disarray. Some members hurried to contain the crisis, strategizing damage control and press statements. Others offered Isabella tentative smiles of gratitude for stepping up. Antonio touched her shoulder. You did the right thing, he murmured. Isabella let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. I hope so, but right now I'm just relieved it's over. She glanced around at the emptying boardroom. The seat Jonathan had once occupied at its head stood vacant, a powerful symbol of how quickly fortunes could change. The company's future was uncertain, but at least it wasn't barreling toward disaster under Montague's shadow. For Isabella, it felt like a small victory, one born of necessity, forged by heartbreak but sealed in unwavering resolve. As she and Lydia stepped back into the corridor, the rain still fell against the vast windows, a fitting backdrop to a day that had swept away the illusions Jonathan constructed. Isabella placed a hand on her belly again, silently reminding herself that this was the beginning of something new for herself and for the life growing inside her. The fallout from the emergency board meeting was immediate. Financial analysts proclaimed it the swiftest toppling of a tech titan in recent memory. Stock prices wobbled as investors scrambled for clarity on the scandal. Media outlets unleashed a torrent of stories about Jonathan's misconduct, Clarissa's shady consultancy fees, and the broader Montague international investigation. Jonathan was forced to issue a statement through his attorneys, claiming he had no direct knowledge of Montague's illegal activities, a weak defense at best. Clarissa vanished from the public eye. Unsubstantiated rumors suggested she fled to Europe with a healthy payout from her father, while some tabloids speculated she was trying to cling to Jonathan behind closed doors. None of that mattered to Isabella anymore. She had taken her stand. In the weeks that followed, Harrington Tech began a major restructuring. The board instated an interim CEO, a veteran executive who promised transparency and reform. As the dust settled, it became apparent that Isabella had inadvertently saved the company from a catastrophic partnership. Shareholders began to view her not as the spurned wife, but as the courageous whistleblower who acted just in time. Meanwhile, Isabella prepared for motherhood. Despite the stress and heartbreak, she found solace in quiet moments, reading baby books and listening to classical music in the nursery she had decorated herself. Lydia visited often, bringing comfort foods and updates on the shifting social scene. "Everyone is talking about how you brought Jonathan to his knees," Lydia said with a proud grin. Isabella only shook her head. She found no joy in revenge. She had done what she felt was necessary to protect her child and, ironically, even to protect Jonathan's company from his own worst instincts. One crisp autumn morning, Isabella went into labor. Lydia rushed her to the hospital, where she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Luca Charles Harrington, honoring both her Italian roots and Jonathan's father, who had once shown her kindness in the early days of her marriage. Overcome with emotion, Isabella held the tiny life in her arms, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. Jonathan, informed belatedly by hospital staff, arrived hours later. He stood awkwardly at the door, eyes flickering between Isabella and the baby. He looked worn, the scandal having taken its toll, dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled. When he finally stepped forward, Luca stirred, as if sensing a presence that was both familiar and strange. "Bella," Jonathan began, voice hoarse. May I hold him?" She hesitated, recalling his public betrayal, the months of torment, but Luca had the right to know his father. Carefully she placed the newborn in Jonathan's arms. He cradled the small bundle, his stern features softening as he gazed into his son's face. Isabella watched a flurry of emotions cross his eyes: regret, wonder, perhaps a glimmer of love. He seemed to forget about everything else in that moment. But Isabella hadn't forgotten. After a lingering silence, Jonathan cleared his throat, handing the baby back gently. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said quietly, "but I'm sorry." For the first time, Isabella heard sincerity in his voice, but it did little to mend the deep wound in her heart. She spoke softly, not wanting to disturb the sleeping infant in her arms. "Jonathan, you turned our lives upside down. You humiliated me in front of the world, and you nearly destroyed Harrington Tech. I did what I had to do to protect our child and myself." He looked down, unable to meet her gaze. After a brief pause, she added, "We can discuss co-parenting arrangements through my attorney." He nodded, eyes damp. She sensed a part of him wanted to beg for a second chance. But the gap between them was insurmountable. The heartbreak couldn't be undone by a single moment of remorse. "Take care of him," he whispered, then quietly left. In the aftermath, Isabella devoted herself to motherhood, cherishing every coo and gurgle from baby Luca. Legal proceedings for the divorce commenced smoothly. Jonathan, eager to avoid further scandal, granted her generous terms, including a substantial trust fund for Luca, the mansion, and a stake in Harrington Tech. Though it was a fraction of his former wealth, it was enough for Isabella to raise her child comfortably, independent of Jonathan's whims. The press eventually moved on to newer scandals, but the tale of the millionaire who replaced his pregnant wife, only for her to topple his empire, became something of a cautionary urban legend. Privately, Isabella felt relief more than triumph. She had escaped Jonathan's shadow and secured her child's future. She never wanted to revel in vengeance. She only sought fairness, respect, and a home free from deceit. As the seasons changed, she often walked with Luca through Central Park, reflecting on how far she'd come. She had journeyed from a young Italian immigrant to the poised wife of a millionaire, then to a betrayed woman who refused to be a victim. Against all odds, she emerged strong, independent, and determined to give her son the life he deserved. For Isabella, that was her final victory, one far sweeter than any corporate triumph. Scandal, betrayal, and triumph. Isabella's journey reveals how a quiet strength can shatter even the mightiest illusions. Once abandoned and shamed, she rose to protect the future she cherished most, her child, Luca. By exposing corruption within Harrington Tech and severing the toxic ties of her marriage, Isabella reshaped her own destiny. She never intended to become a hero in the public eye, but her resolve spoke louder than scandalous headlines. Now, free from Jonathan's ruthless ambitions, she has embraced a second chance for genuine happiness. The scars remain, but they stand as proof of her resilience. If you found her story inspiring, share it with friends, leave a comment on the biggest twist that took you by surprise, and subscribe for more incredible life dramas. You never know who might need a reminder that even the most formidable challenges can be toppled by unwavering resolve and one final card played.
Damien Blackwell wasn't born into wealth. He fought for it, with the kind of ruthless ambition that made him as feared as he was admired. Standing at 6'2", with carefully styled jet black hair, Damien possessed an intensity that could either captivate or intimidate, depending on which side of his generosity you landed on. By age 35, he had turned a small real estate venture into a sprawling empire. His name was whispered at exclusive charity balls, and he was recognized by moguls in the business world. Tabloid columns loved to label him a self-made millionaire with a heart of stone. Yet society columns fawned over him as the unstoppable visionary on the rise. Despite the rumors swirling around him, people craved his presence. They invited him to their galas and philanthropic events, hoping a portion of his Midas touch might rub off. He'd appear in the company of A-list celebrities. Oprah Winfrey once interviewed him on a short segment, calling him the real deal, and he'd been spotted at a fundraiser sitting next to Bill Gates discussing global real estate strategies. His was a name that opened doors, sealed deals, and turned heads. But behind the veneer of polished success lay a tangled personal life. Damien was married, though not everyone in his social circle knew it. And he also had a mistress, a younger woman named Charmaine Delgado, who was cunning enough to stand by his side when it mattered, and discreet enough to remain in the shadows until she chose not to. It all began one deceptively quiet morning in their New York penthouse. Damien sipping his black coffee, looking over spreadsheets of property acquisitions. Charmaine flipping through a luxury magazine, her eyes lingering on an article about extravagant parties. A dazzling idea began to form in her mind that would soon lead to chaos. The quiet secret of Damien's life was his marriage to Elizabeth Redwood. At 28, Elizabeth exuded a calm, regal grace. She had grown up in a well-respected family in Boston. Her father, Jonathan Redwood, was a high-powered attorney, and her mother, Catherine Redwood, was a socialite renowned for her philanthropic work. Unlike Damien, Elizabeth had come from money, but she carried her privilege with humility. She taught underprivileged children art in a non-profit school. The marriage was low-key. Elizabeth had never been much for public fanfare, and Damien was all too willing to keep his personal life private to protect his empire from scrutiny. Over the years, they had cultivated an image of a silent, behind-the-scenes couple, rarely photographed together, rarely attending events hand in hand. Some thought they were just close business partners. Others assumed they had parted ways. Only a few intimates knew the truth. But Elizabeth was pregnant, something she had confided only in her close friend, Bella Thompson. They were planning to tell the world in their own time. But the pregnancy was a delicate matter. She had suffered 2 miscarriages in the past, and the heartbreak made her cautious. So Elizabeth kept a low profile, preferring to rest in the couple's Connecticut estate, rather than remain in the hustle and bustle of the city. Damien's visits to Connecticut had grown infrequent. The demands of his business took him overseas, so he said. Elizabeth trusted him mostly. She had chosen to focus on her health, certain that once the baby arrived, their marriage would find renewed purpose. What she didn't know was that Damien wasn't merely away on business. He was in Manhattan often with Charmaine Delgado on his arm. And Charmaine was hatching a plan that would rattle the foundations of everything Elizabeth believed about her marriage. Charmaine Delgado was a woman who knew how to make an entrance. With chestnut brown hair styled in sleek waves, impeccable designer outfits, and a fierce determination in her hazel eyes, she had carved out a place for herself in high society, albeit on the margins of respectability. People whispered that she was Damien's mistress, but they also noticed that her circle included the wives of major hedge fund managers, fashion influencers, and even small-time celebrities who adored her lavish dinner parties. She wasn't satisfied with being a well-kept secret. Her ultimate goal was to become the next Mrs. Blackwell. She loved the taste of power she enjoyed at Damien's side. The hush money, the compliments, the exclusive events he brought her to under the pretense of a business associate. She wanted more than stolen weekends in a Paris penthouse or summers at a Tuscan villa. She longed to replace Elizabeth Redwood, whom she considered dull and undeserving of the empire Damien was building. "Have you thought about throwing a party?" Charmaine cooed one morning as she lounged in Damien's penthouse, the city skyline glittering behind her. A big one, with all the right people. It could be a statement event. Maybe a fundraiser for your new philanthropic arm. Damien, engrossed in reading a financial report, merely raised an eyebrow. "You know those events are important, but we have an entire pep team that organizes them. I don't need more noise around me," she persisted. "We need to show the world you're a man of the people, not just a cutthroat deal-maker. And you know I can handle logistics. Our friend Ariana Roswell from the Van Cleef & Arpels brand could sponsor part of it. It'll be huge, darling." He shrugged. "I'll consider it. Right now, I'm more focused on finalizing a land acquisition in Dubai." But that was just the first step of Charmaine's plan. She knew a single social event wouldn't be enough to stir up the scandal that might eventually push Elizabeth aside. She needed something bigger, something personal. And an opportunity was about to present itself in the most unexpected way. Miles away, Elizabeth Redwood was experiencing a new wave of morning sickness in the Connecticut estate. Damien's presence had dwindled to phone calls, text messages. They were cordial, affectionate, even, but detached. He assured her he was overworked and traveling internationally, promising that once deals were settled, he'd be back for a calm, quiet life together, especially when the baby arrived. Late one night, Elizabeth felt an unsettling pang in her chest that had nothing to do with pregnancy. It was a sense that something was off. Her friend Bella had dropped by earlier in the day, showing her social media photos from a party Charmaine Delgado had thrown. Charmaine's Instagram stories were suspiciously replete with hints of a wealthy backer. The location was suspiciously similar to a penthouse Elizabeth recognized as one of Damien's properties in Manhattan. Elizabeth tried to stifle the jealousy, telling herself that this was just a business associate hosting a private function. But the uneasy feeling refused to go away. After all, rumors about an affair had trickled through her social circle for some time, but she had always dismissed them as petty gossip. Now the evidence was piling up, pictures of Charmaine in lavish settings that Elizabeth knew only Damien could access. She placed a hand on her small baby bump. With the child's gentle fluttering in her womb, it felt like both a promise and a reminder. She and Damien were a family. They had a future. She told herself, I have to trust him. Stress is the last thing I need right now. But doubt is a seed that once planted grows rapidly, especially in the lonely quiet of a large estate where your husband's presence is rare. One drizzly afternoon, Charmaine discovered the depth of Damien's secret. A single oversight on his part, he had left a series of open messages on his laptop while he stepped away to answer a phone call. Charmaine saw a digital note from Damien's assistant congratulating him on his wife's pregnancy. Charmaine's heart clenched. She knew Elizabeth existed, but she hadn't realized Elizabeth was pregnant. Jealous fury simmered beneath her carefully poised exterior. She paced the penthouse, chewing on her glossed lip. Eyes narrowed. He's going to have a baby with that woman, she hissed under her breath. What about me? But soon a twisted idea formed in her cunning mind. She decided to use this pregnancy to her advantage. If she could insert herself into the baby's life, she might become indispensable. And so she hatched a plan, so audacious it felt almost delirious, host a baby shower. For Elizabeth, yes, but secretly orchestrated by Charmaine herself and used as a platform to humiliate the pregnant wife or force a confrontation in public. She cornered Damien one evening with a proposition. You never do anything big for Elizabeth, she said sweetly. Why don't we celebrate her pregnancy? It'll be good, Pierre. Everyone in your social circle will know you're a family man. You're committed to your wife. He stiffened. Elizabeth is very private. Besides, she's in Connecticut, and you know she's had complications before. She wouldn't want a big show. Oh, hush, Charmaine insisted. We'll make it a small, intimate affair. A high-end baby shower with carefully vetted guests. I'll handle everything discreetly. It'll be a great show of unity, especially for the tabloids. You could even do it at one of your properties to keep it private. Damien frowned, torn. I don't think Elizabeth would appreciate it if a stranger organizes her baby shower. Charmaine placed a manicured hand on his shoulder. Sweetheart, you need to show your support to your wife. Let me help. I'll ensure it's tasteful. No press, just close friends. I'll do all the heavy lifting. Besides, if you throw a shower for her, it'll erase all those silly rumors about me and you. Her eyes sparkled with the hidden motive, a chance to stake her claim in his life, to show Elizabeth and the world that she was more than just a rumor. Damien was reluctant, but eventually conceded, thinking it might indeed quell whispers of scandal if there appeared to be a friendly relationship between the two women. Charmaine couldn't help but smirk when he agreed. She quickly sent out invitations, making sure to invite only select members of high society and a few of Elizabeth's acquaintances. She didn't invite Elizabeth's family or closest friends. She wanted to keep the event's planning under her strict control. News of the upcoming baby shower spread quietly through upper-crust circles, almost as if it were a secret event for the select few. Elizabeth heard about it from Bella Thompson, who received an invitation by email. Elizabeth's confusion grew. A baby shower hosted by Charmaine Delgado. The name alone made her heart skip a beat. Instead of confronting Damien directly, Elizabeth decided to keep her composure. She confronted him calmly on a phone call. Why is Charmaine Delgado organizing my baby shower? Damien cleared his throat, his tone reassuring. I wanted to do something special for you, Charmaine volunteered. She's helping me out. I have so many business commitments, and you know she's got connections in event planning circles. She promised it would be small and refined. Elizabeth's gut twisted, but a part of her wanted to believe he was telling the truth, that Charmaine was merely a helpful business associate. She grudgingly agreed to attend, if only to avoid stress and hope for the best. After all, she had always wanted a moment to celebrate her pregnancy with friends. Maybe this was an olive branch. Maybe it would help her and Damien reconnect. But behind the scenes, Charmaine pulled every string to make this baby shower a spectacle. She selected an opulent venue, a palatial rooftop terrace belonging to one of Damien's real estate partners overlooking Central Park. She ordered pastel floral arrangements, towering centerpieces of orchids and roses imported from a prestigious florist in Paris. There would be a harpist, a string quartet, an array of gourmet amuse-bouches, and a cake so lavish it rivaled wedding tears. In the hush of her private thoughts, Charmaine planned her own unveiling. She would arrive looking stunning, the perfect hostess. She'd drop hints about her closeness with Damien to unnerve Elizabeth. And if all went according to plan, Elizabeth would be so overwhelmed she might even retreat, leaving Charmaine to bask in Damien's spotlight. As the date of the shower approached, Elizabeth felt an unshakable anxiety. She was 7 months pregnant, trying to remain calm for the sake of the baby. Bella accompanied her to Manhattan, insisting she shouldn't go alone given her fragile emotional state. They arrived at the luxury hotel where Damien had booked them a suite. When Elizabeth entered the penthouse suite, she found a note from Damien, apologizing that he wouldn't be able to join her immediately. He had an urgent business dinner. She sank into the plush sofa, tears threatening. Her hand instinctively rested on her belly, feeling the baby's gentle kicks. Bella poured her a glass of sparkling water. "Damien's being distant again," Bella said softly. "Do you trust him?" "Lizzie." Elizabeth blinked back tears. "I'm trying to. Everything is so confusing right now. He insists he loves me, wants this baby. Yet I see Charmaine in all his public appearances, and now she's hosting my baby shower." Bella offered a reassuring arm around her shoulder. "Tomorrow, you'll see the truth. Sometimes you need to look your fears in the eye. If something is off, I'll be right there to support you." That night, Elizabeth couldn't sleep. She thought of her father's disapproving glance whenever the subject of Damien arose, recalled how her mother once gently hinted that Damien's lifestyle might not mesh well with a stable marriage. Elizabeth had defended him passionately, saying he was just driven, not unfaithful. Now her worst suspicions were creeping in. Could Charmaine Delgado be more than just a helpful business associate? A brilliant late-morning sun bathed the rooftop terrace in golden light the next day. Waitstaff wearing crisp white uniforms circulated silver trays of champagne flutes, fresh squeezed juices, and hors d'oeuvres. Guests trickled in, each more glamorous than the last. The decor was a pastel dreamscape. Delicate pink, mint, and lavender ribbons dangling from tall arches of greenery. A harpist plucked gentle tunes in the corner. Charmaine Delgado made her entrance in a sleek mauve cocktail dress with diamond accents. Heads turned. She was radiant, playing the role of the gracious hostess to perfection, greeting influential socialites and business figures with warm smiles. She seemed to relish every polite question about her connection to the Blackwells. Her eyes roved over the crowd, waiting for Elizabeth. After a tense elevator ride, Elizabeth arrived on the rooftop, escorted by Bella. The moment Elizabeth stepped onto the terrace, a hush fell, followed by murmurs of admiration. She wore a flowing cream maternity gown, her face glowing despite her anxious heart. She placed a protective hand over her baby bump. Charmaine approached with outstretched arms, her smile a calculated blend of warmth and condescension. "Elizabeth, darling, I'm so glad you made it. I've been dying to meet you in person." Elizabeth plastered a polite smile. "Thank you for hosting this. It's quite lovely. I wanted to honor the mother of Damien's child." Charmaine emphasized the name with a slight smirk. "He's told me so much about you. We must chat more later, once you've greeted all these lovely guests." Elizabeth nodded, her brow furrowing. As she glanced around, she noticed many faces. Some were her distant acquaintances, others complete strangers. Few of her real friends were here. It felt like Charmaine's friends, Charmaine's alliances. Elizabeth suddenly felt alien in what should have been her moment. Across the terrace, a small group of women huddled together, whispering and glancing at Elizabeth. She felt the sting of their judgment. Rumors about Charmaine's relationship with Damien had clearly reached these circles, and many were watching to see how Elizabeth would react. Damien himself was noticeably absent. An hour into the festivities, Elizabeth tried to make the best of it. She politely thanked each guest for coming, endured the cooing over baby gifts, and fielded vague compliments about how lucky she was to have such a supportive friend in Charmaine. Bella hovered protectively nearby, noticing the forced smiles and the subtle slights. "Lizzie, do you want to sit down?" Bella asked gently. "You look pale." Elizabeth felt overheated, but she forced a reassuring smile. "I'm fine. Just need a bit of water." Bella guided her to a seat. As a waiter brought over a glass of ice water, Charmaine reappeared, dragging along a tall woman named Harriet McAllister, a flamboyant gossip columnist for one of the city's scandal rags. Harriet was known for her sharp tongue and sensational headlines. She was exactly the kind of presence Elizabeth had wanted to avoid. Charmaine purred Elizabeth. "Darling Harriet here would love a quick chat about your plans once the baby arrives. She's a dear friend and does these wonderful pieces on society families." Elizabeth's stomach churned. She felt cornered. She recognized Harriet's byline stories about extramarital affairs, hidden marriages, and love children that sold out tabloids. With a forced graciousness, Elizabeth offered a handshake. "Pleasure to meet you." Harriet's lipsticked grin was disarming. "My readers would be thrilled to know about your journey. We rarely see you in public. Are you hoping to step into more philanthropic work?" After the baby, Elizabeth recalled her ongoing involvement with children's art education. "I've always been philanthropic, Harriet. My work with underprivileged children is where my heart lies." Harriet's gaze flickered to Charmaine, as if searching for a bigger story. "And how has Ms. Delgado here helped you prepare for motherhood?" Elizabeth swallowed her discomfort. "She's kindly hosting this shower. It's very thoughtful of her." Charmaine smirked, hooking an arm around Harriet's. "Damien trusts me implicitly with these sorts of things. We've collaborated on many projects." Elizabeth's heart hammered. She wanted to scream. Instead, she smiled politely, feeling a swirl of nausea. Harriet's eyes gleamed, sensing tension. "Well, I look forward to writing something wonderful," Harriet said, in a tone that implied she wanted to dig up drama. "Thank you both." As Harriet wandered away, Charmaine leaned in close to Elizabeth, lips curling in a mocking smile. "You must be so exhausted. Sure you can handle all this excitement?" "Dear," Elizabeth met her gaze firmly. "I'm fine. I hope Damien arrives soon. This is after all our baby shower." Charmaine's eyebrows arched, a spark of triumph in her eyes. "Oh, he'll be here. Don't worry. He wouldn't miss his own event. From across the terrace, Bella flashed Elizabeth a worried look. Something was brewing, and they both sensed that Charmaine had not yet played her final card. Mid-afternoon, a wave of murmuring swept through the guests. Damien Blackwell entered, flanked by a couple of his business associates. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, exuding confidence, even as tension pinched the corners of his mouth. Elizabeth mustered a smile as she approached him. He leaned down to kiss her cheek, whispering, "You look beautiful." She forced a smile. "Thank you." Without missing a beat, Charmaine swooped in, greeting Damien with an intimate hug that lingered too long. Elizabeth's jaw tightened. Some guests averted their eyes uncomfortably. Others watched eagerly for signs of drama. Damien cleared his throat. "Charmaine, you've outdone yourself. This is spectacular." She beamed. "Only the best for your wife." Her lips curved at the word, as though it were a faint insult. "Now, dear guests," Charmaine said, raising her voice to gather attention. "May I have everyone's attention for a moment? We have a very special surprise planned for Elizabeth and Damien." Two waiters wheeled out a multi-tiered cake adorned with sugar roses and a shining gold bee for baby Blackwell. Gasps of admiration rose among the guests. Charmaine continued, "This baby represents a new chapter in the Blackwell legacy. We all know Damien is a man of ambition and power, but behind every great man is a great woman. Or so they say. Elizabeth, you're carrying his pride and joy, his future heir." Elizabeth swallowed, bracing for the spotlight. She felt a wave of relief that at least in this moment, Charmaine's speech sounded oddly supportive. But then Charmaine's gaze flicked to Harriet McAllister in the crowd. Sometimes, Charmaine said, "The greatest test of love is how we handle adversity." And I think we all need to raise a toast to that. Because it's not just about the baby. It's about forging a future that might change the face of the Blackwell Empire forever. A hush fell as glasses were lifted. Elizabeth felt something ominous in Charmaine's words. Damien's expression was inscrutable, yet a slight twitch in his jaw betrayed tension. "Cheers!" Charmaine declared, her eyes flashing with triumphant challenge. Glasses clinked, but no one seemed entirely at ease. It was as though the moment was waiting for something to drop like the hush before a devastating storm. The cake was sliced. The harpist played softly, and guests milled about in the golden glow of early evening. Bella pulled Elizabeth aside gently, pressing a crisp document into her hand. "Lizzie, this came by courier for you at the hotel front desk. It's from your father." Puzzled, Elizabeth unfolded the paper. Her eyes scanned over a statement from her father's attorney, referencing property transactions tied to Damien and Charmaine Delgado, purchased under a shell corporation. Elizabeth's heart stuttered. So it was true he was financially supporting Charmaine in more ways than a simple fling. There was mention of a property in Paris, high-end jewelry acquisitions, and hush money payments disguised as consulting fees. Tears pricked Elizabeth's eyes. Her father had, in his own cautious way, tried to protect her. This document spelled out a betrayal more devastating than any rumor. She glanced at Bella, who squeezed her hand in support. Elizabeth took a steadying breath. "I need to confront him. Now." Leaving Bella behind, Elizabeth navigated through the throng of guests. She found Damien alone near the bar. His phone buzzed on the counter beside him. He looked anxious, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. She handed him the document, voice quivering. "Damien, what is this?" He scanned the pages, color draining from his face. "Elizabeth, I can explain." Her voice rose, trembling with anger and heartbreak. "Explain how you're buying properties for this woman while I'm at home pregnant with your child. How many lies have I believed? Were you ever traveling on business or just off with her?" He tried to grab her hand, but she recoiled. "It's complicated. I was trying to protect you, the baby. My deals are huge. They require alliances." Charmaine was Elizabeth's eyes glistened. "You used me. I was carrying your child, hoping we'd be a real family, and you've been building a future with her." A hush spread as guests nearby picked up on the argument. Charmaine across the terrace watched like a hawk, lips curving into a small smile. Damien struggled for composure, but the tension in the air crackled. Elizabeth turned away, tears streaming. She was about to flee when Charmaine made her final move. Charmaine approached, feigning concern. "Elizabeth, darling, is something wrong?" Elizabeth glared at her. "Don't darling me. You know exactly what you've done." Damien looked on helplessly. Charmaine battered her lashes, turning to the onlooking crowd. "My friends, please, let's give Damien and Elizabeth some space." Then, in a lower voice, she added, "We're all on the same side, right? This is Damien's baby, after all." Elizabeth's voice cracked. "You have no business in my marriage." Charmaine smirked. "I hate to be the bearer of difficult news, but you might want to brace yourself." She placed a hand on her own stomach. "Because I'm pregnant too." Gasps rippled through the guests like an electric shock. Elizabeth's face went ghostly pale. The words seemed to echo, bouncing off the marble columns of the terrace. Damien's eyes widened in horror. What Elizabeth breathed, barely able to stand. Bella rushed to her side, supporting her. Charmaine's smirk deepened. "Surprised Damien is going to be the father of my child? That's the real reason I planned this shower. A test run, if you will, for the bigger celebration." A mixture of shock and revulsion spread across the guests. Harriet McAllister had her phone out, already taking notes for a sensational article. Elizabeth's trembling hand rested on her own belly. The heartbreak was overwhelming. She thought of the many nights she prayed for this pregnancy to be safe, while her husband created a new life with Charmaine. The betrayal was too immense to put into words. Damien looked trapped, like a man whose secrets had finally caught up to him. "Charmaine," he hissed. "You said you wouldn't." She flipped her hair triumphantly. "I changed my mind. You can't sweep me under the rug anymore, Damien, especially not when I'm carrying your child. Everyone here deserves to know the truth." Elizabeth's legs weakened, and Bella guided her to a chair. The crescendo of scandalous whispers rose around them. For a moment, Elizabeth's world spun. Quietly, deliberately, Elizabeth stood again. She locked eyes with Charmaine, then glared at Damien. Her anger surged, adrenaline fueling her. She reached into her small clutch and pulled out a document, her official marriage license to Damien, along with a copy of their wedding certificate, sealed and signed by the state of Massachusetts. She raised her voice with as much composure as she could muster. "You think you can come into my baby shower, my life, and pretend you have some rightful claim to my husband? Let me make something clear to everyone. Here I am, Mrs. Elizabeth Redwood Blackwell, and that is not changing unless I say so." She held the documents up for the onlookers to see. "This is our marriage license, and we are legally married. This scandal you're trying to create will not erase that fact." Charmaine's composure wavered for a second, but she quickly regained her smugness. "Legally married or not, I'm carrying his child. That's a bond you can't break." Elizabeth's tears were gone, replaced by anger and the fierce protectiveness of a mother. "Get out of my face!" Damien tried to step between them. "Both of you calm down. This is not the place for..." Elizabeth turned on him with fury in her eyes. "Not the place, Damien. You let your mistress plan my baby shower. You humiliated me in front of all these people. You might have impregnated her too, and you have the audacity to say this is not the place." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The tension in the air was suffocating. Harriet, phone in hand, was practically salivating at the unfolding drama. The hush gave way to frantic whispers. Some guests discreetly slipped away, wanting no part in the public meltdown. Others stayed transfixed as though watching a train wreck they couldn't turn away from. Elizabeth staggered, pressing a hand to her belly. Bella, alarmed, quickly came forward. "We need to get you out of here, Lizzie." Charmaine sneered. "Oh, the poor dear. Maybe next time she won't be so self-righteous when she's married to a man who can't stay faithful." Elizabeth's voice trembled with outrage. "If I wasn't pregnant, I'd slap you right now." Bella, furious, snapped. "Let's go, Lizzie. This isn't worth risking your health." They made their exit, the stunned crowd parting like the Red Sea to let the pregnant wife pass. Charmaine's lips formed a triumphant smirk, as though she had won something. But in truth, she had just ignited a scandal that would haunt all three of them. Damien hesitated a moment, torn between chasing Elizabeth and dealing with Charmaine. Ultimately, he rushed after his wife, leaving Charmaine in the middle of the shell-shocked guests. Harriet McAllister wasted no time snapping a covert photo of Charmaine's smug face. Later that evening, social media was ablaze with rumors of the fiasco. Several guests posted cryptic updates. "Never seen a baby shower end with such fireworks." Harriet McAllister teased a big expose fueling interest in every corner of Manhattan high society. Back in the penthouse hotel suite, Elizabeth was inconsolable. She had locked herself in the bedroom while Bella tried to calm her down, urging her to rest, to think of the baby. When Damien arrived, Bella blocked his entrance. "Lizzie doesn't want to see you right now." Damien spoke in a low, urgent voice. "I need to explain." "Please, Bella." Bella's eyes flashed with protective fury. "Explain how you lied to her for months, how you not only cheated on her but let your mistress host her baby shower." "Just go, Damien. You've done enough." The door cracked open. Elizabeth's voice, weak from crying, emerged. "Let him in, Bella. I need to hear what he has to say." Reluctantly, Bella stepped aside. Damien entered and found Elizabeth sitting on the edge of the bed. Her eyes read a box of tissues at her side. "Lizzie," he began softly. "I'm sorry. I never wanted this to happen." "Charmaine. Well, she was more than a fling, but never meant to replace you." She looked up, anger and heartbreak shining in her eyes. "Is she really pregnant?" He hesitated. "She says she is, but I haven't seen any medical proof. She blindsided me too. I swear I never intended for that to happen." Elizabeth let out a bitter laugh. "So it's a possibility. I was home carrying our child while you were off, impregnating someone else." He sank to his knees beside her. "There's no excuse. The truth is I got caught up. I was lonely traveling, dealing with pressure. We drifted apart, and Charmaine was available. I'm sorry." Tears streaked her face. "Lonely, I was lonely too. I lost 2 babies before this one. Remember, I needed you, Damien." His voice cracked. "I know, Lizzie. I failed you, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it right if you let me." She stared at him, an ocean of hurt welling in her eyes. Right now, I need space. I need to protect my baby. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Bella re-entered, guiding Elizabeth into the next room. She needs rest, Damien. You should go. Damien stood, realizing the gravity of what he might lose. Lizzie, I love you. I love our child. I promise, whatever it takes. His voice trailed off. Elizabeth turned away, tears dripping from her chin. Just leave. While Elizabeth tried to recover from the emotional blow, Charmaine reveled in the aftermath. She sat in her own luxury apartment, scanning gossip websites. They'd already begun posting sensational headlines. Millionaire, real estate, mogul faces baby shower scandal, 2 women. 1 baby or 2. She sipped champagne. Smiling at the tabloid photos, one showed Elizabeth, tear-streaked, holding the marriage license aloft. Another captured Charmaine's triumphant smirk. But her phone rang with an unexpected call. Gerald Anderson, one of Damien's close business associates, an older man who had brokered many of Damien's biggest deals. Charmaine answered playfully, "Gerald, darling." "Calling to congratulate me." Gerald's tone was ice. "You've made a spectacle of yourself and Damien. This fiasco is dangerous for the company. The board is worried about negative press. Damien's deals in Asia are already wavering. Investors don't like scandal." Charmaine rolled her eyes. "Tell them to relax. All publicity is good publicity. People will forget in a week." Gerald's voice hardened. "Not this time. Your stunts might cost billions. Damien's name is on the line, and so is yours if you keep pushing this. I'd advise you to disappear quietly or face legal consequences." Charmaine bristled. "Legal consequences for carrying his child? Don't be absurd. I have my own resources. Damien won't let anything happen to me or the baby." Gerald's laugh was humorless. "You're naive if you think he'll jeopardize his empire for you. My recommendation: lay low, handle this discreetly, and pray that Elizabeth doesn't drag you through court. That would be a bloodbath you can't win." The line went dead. Charmaine's smirk wavered. She realized with a chill that no matter how cunning she was, she might be playing a game against forces far larger and more ruthless. Still, she refused to be intimidated. Damien might be the father of her unborn child if she was indeed pregnant, and she intended to leverage that to her greatest advantage. Days turned into a week, and the scandal didn't die down, as Charmaine had predicted. If anything, it spread further. Media outlets that usually stayed away from private affairs devoured the story. Online forums buzzed with speculation. Damien's reputation took a hit, and so did the share price of some of his companies. In Connecticut, Elizabeth tried to find solace. She spent hours in her art studio painting her emotions, swirls of dark blues and fiery oranges depicting her turmoil. Bella stayed with her, ensuring she ate and rested. Late one afternoon, her father, Jonathan Redwood, arrived. He was a tall, stern man who rarely showed emotion. When Elizabeth saw him step into her living room, she burst into tears. She was Daddy's little girl, and her heartbreak was palpable. He held her gently. "I'm here now, Lizzie. We'll fix this." Through sobs, she recounted everything. The baby shower. Charmaine's bombshell, the public humiliation. Jonathan listened quietly, anger flashing in his eyes. "It's time to think about your future, not just your marriage," he said in a measured tone. Damien's not the only one who can protect you financially. You have your trust fund, and your mother and I will support you. If you want a divorce, we'll ensure you and the baby are taken care of." Elizabeth's lips trembled. "I love him, Dad, but I can't be with someone who betrays me. Not if he won't change. I have to put my baby first." He squeezed her shoulder. "Your mother and I stand behind you. We'll consult with top lawyers. Whether you want a settlement or full custody, we'll figure this out." Elizabeth took a shaking breath. "I just need time to think. I don't want a drawn-out court battle. It's too much stress for the baby. But I won't let Charmaine ruin my life." Her father nodded. "Take all the time you need. We'll keep your options open." In that moment, Elizabeth felt a seed of strength. She might have lost faith in her marriage, but she wasn't helpless. She had her own resources and a powerful family behind her. She vowed not to let her child suffer because of Damien's mistakes. Meanwhile, Damien scrambled to contain the fallout. He held emergency meetings with his PR team and business partners. They devised a strategy to minimize damage, releasing a statement that personal matters are being handled privately and urging the media to respect the family's privacy. But the tabloids thrived on scandal, and every new rumor about Charmaine's alleged pregnancy fueled more headlines. Damien left countless voicemails for Elizabeth. She rarely answered, speaking only when absolutely necessary, mostly about her doctor's appointments. Desperate, he drove to Connecticut unannounced, ignoring his schedule of business calls. He found Elizabeth in the backyard garden, tending to a patch of hydrangeas. She looked serene, though heartbreak lingered in her eyes. Bella, seeing Damien approach, quietly slipped inside. Elizabeth rose, wiping her hands. "Damien." He swallowed hard. "Lizzie, I know you need space, but I had to see you." She shrugged. "I'm guessing your board is demanding that you fix this mess." He sighed. "They are. But that's not why I'm here. This is about us, our baby. I'm sorry I let Charmaine get so close. I was an idiot letting her host that shower. And if she's really pregnant, I'll deal with it." Elizabeth inhaled slowly, the weight of her sorrow evident. "I'm not sure there's an us to fix anymore, Damien. You humiliated me. You lied. You might have fathered another child. How do we come back from that?" He stepped closer, voice cracking. "By remembering what we had, what we still have. We've always been there for each other, especially after our miscarriages. Don't let Charmaine's scheming tear us apart." Elizabeth bit her lip. Memories of their wedding day fluttered in her mind, the quiet vows, the sense of hope. Could she forgive him? Finally she spoke. "I can't just snap my fingers and pretend everything's okay. I need to see you genuinely change. I won't raise this baby in a broken home. But I also won't let you walk in and out as you please. It's all or nothing." He nodded, tears gleaming in his eyes. "I understand. Whatever it takes, I'll do it. I'll cut Charmaine out of my life, if that's what you want." Elizabeth's gaze turned steely. "What if she's pregnant with your child? You can't just walk away from that responsibility." Damien looked pained. "I'll provide for that child, but that doesn't mean I have to be with her. I want my family with you." Elizabeth's throat tightened. "Show me you mean it. Because if this is another lie, Damien, I promise you I will walk away for good." A week later, a private meeting was arranged. Elizabeth insisted on seeing Charmaine's proof of pregnancy before making any decisions. Charmaine agreed to a meeting, likely eager to flaunt her hold over Damien. They chose a neutral location, Gerald Anderson's stately townhouse in the Upper East Side, away from prying paparazzi cameras. Elizabeth brought Bella and her father. Damien arrived with 2 of his lawyers. Charmaine came with a small entourage, including a self-proclaimed celebrity attorney known for high-profile cases. Tension was thick. Jonathan Redwood set the tone. "We're here to determine if Ms. Delgado is truly carrying Damien's child. If so, we'll discuss necessary arrangements and responsibilities. If not, we'll consider legal action for defamation and emotional distress." Charmaine, wearing a fitted designer dress that showed only a slight curvature at her stomach, crossed her legs confidently. "How dare you threaten me? I have every right to be here to claim what's mine." One of Damien's lawyers interjected. "We have a doctor on standby to conduct the appropriate blood tests and ultrasound. You agreed to this, Ms. Delgado." Charmaine hesitated. "I want my own doctor. Someone I trust." Jonathan Redwood shook his head. "We'll have an impartial physician, one neither side can manipulate. If you refuse, we'll assume you're lying." Charmaine's eyes flicked to Damien. "You'd do this to me." "Doubt my word," he sighed. "You've given me every reason to doubt you, Charmaine. I need proof." She glowered, but eventually relented with a shrug of feigned indifference. "Fine. Test me. But when it comes back positive, you'll regret questioning me." The group moved to a private office where a discreet physician waited. Under watchful eyes, Charmaine underwent a brief ultrasound and blood draw. The tension was palpable as they waited. Damien stood beside Elizabeth, glancing anxiously between her and Charmaine. Bella and Jonathan Redwood watched from the corner, arms folded in silent judgment. When the doctor completed the ultrasound, the screen showed a small embryo clearly visible, measuring about 9 weeks. Charmaine wasn't lying about being pregnant. The hush in the room deepened. A tear slipped down Elizabeth's cheek. Damien closed his eyes, exhaling a shaky breath. Charmaine sent them both a triumphant smile. "Told you." The group reconvened in the townhouse parlor. The doctor confirmed Ms. Delgado is indeed pregnant, approximately 9 weeks along. Further blood tests will confirm paternity, though Ms. Delgado states Mr. Blackwell is the father. Elizabeth felt her world tilt again. Damien swallowed, looking at Elizabeth with guilt. Charmaine smirked at them both, an air of victory radiating from her. Confronted with the undeniable reality of Charmaine's pregnancy, Elizabeth felt a crushing weight descend upon her. She excused herself from the tense meeting, stepping out into the townhouse garden. The gentle sound of a fountain trickled over the hush of thick hedges. She tried to steady her breathing, fighting tears. Damien found her there, carefully approaching. "Lizzie." His voice trembled with heartbreak and regret. "I'm so sorry." She turned eyes blazing with pain. "You've saddled me with a lifetime of sharing you with that woman and a child that's not mine. Do you realize how devastating this is?" He reached for her hand, voice thick with remorse. "All I can do is own my mistake. I don't want to lose you. Let me prove to you that I can be the husband and father you deserve." Elizabeth's tears flowed freely. The child in her womb kicked as though sensing her distress. "I don't want my baby to grow up in a broken home, but I refuse to be in a marriage with 3 people. He squeezed her hand gently. "I'll handle everything with Charmaine. We'll set up a trust for her child, ensure financial security. But my home is with you and our baby." She pulled away. Words aren't enough anymore, Damien. Show me through your actions. If you think I'm going to live under the same roof with you while you juggle some arrangement with Charmaine, you're wrong. I'm staying here in Connecticut until I decide what's best for me and the baby. He nodded, tears glistening. I understand. With that, they returned inside. Charmaine looked at them smugly. Jonathan Redwood gave her a cold stare. We'll be in touch regarding legal arrangements. Until then, do not contact my daughter directly. Any communication goes through me or her attorneys. Charmaine flipped her hair. Damien, you know how to reach me if you need anything, especially with the child's appointments. Elizabeth's heart clenched. Without another word, she left, followed by Bella and her father. Damien lingered behind a silent desperation in his eyes. The lines were drawn. The story exploded in the media once Harriet McAllister got wind of Charmaine's confirmed pregnancy. The tabloids had a field day with headlines like Millionaire's double-duty wife and Mistress both pregnant. Late-night hosts made snide jokes. Online comments ranged from sympathy for Elizabeth to outright mockery of Damien's lack of fidelity. Elizabeth retreated to Connecticut, turning off her phone for days at a time, focusing on her health and painting to channel her emotional turmoil. Bella stayed with her, creating a buffer against the swirling press. Jonathan Redwood consulted with divorce attorneys, property lawyers, and PR strategists to weigh every possible outcome for Elizabeth. Damien did his part to distance himself from Charmaine, if only to placate Elizabeth and salvage his marriage. He cut off personal contact channeling communication through his lawyers. He tried to focus on his business acquisitions, but investors grew skittish. The scandal had tarnished his brand. He faced a crisis in Asia when a major partner threatened to pull out unless he resolved his domestic issues. Charmaine, for her part, attended a few public events, flaunting a small baby bump lapping up the media attention. She granted Harriet McAllister an exclusive interview, painting herself as the wronged woman who had accidentally fallen in love with a powerful man. She teased that she still believed Damien would choose her if Elizabeth walked away. Despite the bravado, she was beginning to fear the Redwood family's legal might. As Elizabeth neared her 8th month of pregnancy, her doctor worried about her elevated stress levels. She decided that for her baby's well-being, she needed clarity even if it was painful. She summoned Damien to Connecticut for a final decision. They sat in the sunroom, where the afternoon light filtered through tall windows. Elizabeth wore a simple linen dress, her large belly a testament to how close she was to giving birth. Damien, looking weary and older than his years, sat across from her. Bella remained nearby, silently supportive. Elizabeth spoke first, her voice calm but resolute. I've had time to think. My father is willing to help me file for divorce the moment I decide it's over. But I don't want to make a choice I'll regret just because I'm angry. Damien listened intently, clasping his hands. She continued, I love you. I want our child to have both parents. But I won't be humiliated or lied to. If I stay, I need to know Charmaine is out of our life in every possible way, except for the child you'll need to support. That's unavoidable, but I will not have her at family events in our homes or near me. Damien's eyes brimmed with tears. I swear, Lizzie, I'll do whatever it takes. I want to raise our child together, and I'll protect you from her. I made a mistake, a catastrophic one, but I refuse to lose you because of it. She inhaled shakily. Charmaine won't go quietly. You've seen how she craves attention. She's going to hold this child over your head, and she might stir up more drama. If it becomes too toxic, I'm gone. He nodded. I understand. I'll sign any post-nuptial agreement you want. We can set up a legal framework for Charmaine's baby. Child support visitation. Everything will go through attorneys. No personal involvement. Elizabeth's voice trembled. I'm giving you one last chance, Damien. Don't betray me again, because I won't survive another heartbreak. He moved to kneel in front of her, gently placing his hand on her belly. Thank you, he whispered, for giving me a chance to be a better man for our baby. She placed her hand over his tears, spilling. Don't waste it. A month later, Elizabeth's contractions began late at night. Bella drove her to the hospital, and Damien rushed from the city the moment he got the call, in the sterile glare of the maternity ward. Elizabeth labored through hours of pain, her screams echoing in the corridor. Finally, a healthy baby girl was delivered, wailing with robust life. Damien broke down in tears when he first held his daughter, whispering thanks and apologies to Elizabeth. Exhausted, she smiled weakly, letting him kiss her forehead. There was a sense of fragile unity in that moment. Over the next few days, Elizabeth stayed in the hospital, regaining strength. Damien remained by her side, doting on the baby. Bella and Jonathan Redwood visited, offering cautious support. A swirl of media inquiry buzzed outside, but the hospital maintained strict privacy protocols. The Redwood name carried weight, ensuring Elizabeth could recover in peace. As Elizabeth held her newborn daughter, warmth filled her chest. Love, hope, and determination to protect this precious child. She watched Damien cradle the tiny girl who had his dark hair and her soft features. For a moment it felt like they were a real family, untainted by scandal. But reality loomed. Charmaine was nearing the midpoint of her pregnancy, and she would soon deliver a child who shared Damien's DNA. That future weighed heavily on Elizabeth's heart, even as she tried to savor the bliss of new motherhood. Elizabeth decided to move back to the Connecticut estate, permanently away from the city's gossip. Damien agreed, hoping to rebuild their relationship in the tranquility of the countryside. He spent more days commuting between the city and the estate, determined to show Elizabeth he was committed. Legally, Charmaine's child was recognized. Through carefully negotiated documents, she received a comfortable allowance, medical expenses, and a guarantee of ongoing child support once the baby was born. She tried to push for more face-to-face involvement, but Elizabeth refused. Damien kept his distance, only communicating through lawyers and the occasional phone call regarding medical updates. Charmaine's bitterness grew as she watched from the sidelines. She had expected a grand romance or a highly visible co-parenting arrangement that kept her tethered to Damien's life. Instead, she was relegated to the outskirts, a footnote in his empire. Though wealthy by association, she was still alone, pregnant with a man who'd chosen his wife over her. It wasn't the victory she'd imagined. For Elizabeth, life became a delicate balance, caring for her newborn daughter, grappling with the trauma of betrayal, and trying to trust Damien again. Each day that he returned from the city, without any sign of infidelity, was a small victory. She wondered if she could ever fully forgive him, but she loved him enough to try. Months passed, and the scandal gradually faded from public view, replaced by fresher celebrity gossip. Elizabeth and Damien shared quieter days at the Connecticut estate, cherishing the baby girl who had brought them a renewed sense of purpose. Charmaine eventually gave birth to a healthy boy, then drifted into a more private life when headlines ceased to favor her story. Still, the memory of that explosive baby shower lingered like a cautionary tale. In their elegant living room late at night, Elizabeth sometimes caught Damien gazing at her with a mixture of regret and gratitude. Their marriage was far from perfect, and trust was a fragile plant that needed constant nurturing. But they had chosen to move forward together. And that's the story of the millionaire who let his mistress host the baby shower, only for his pregnant wife to show up with their marriage license. Love betrayal and a chance at redemption if they can hold on. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster ride of secret affairs, surprise pregnancies, and unexpected confrontations. If you were as captivated by this tale of love betrayal and redemption as we were, please hit the like button and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video with your friends who crave juicy drama and unforgettable twists. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because we'll be bringing you even more riveting stories that shine a light on the hidden scandals lurking beneath the glittering surface of high society. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to keep you on the edge of your seat with our next jaw-dropping tale.